Okay, looks like it's time to get started. Thank you everyone for joining our live lecture today. My name is Isaac and I'll be the lead instructor for the lecture. And today's topic is going to be Front-End Foundations Part 2. So this lecture will cover the second half of the Front-End Foundations curriculum. So if you're in that section, this is the lecture for you. A couple things to mention before we get started today. The first one being we're going to stop periodically throughout this lecture to open the floor for questions. So if you do have those come up along the way, we just ask that you wait until those designated times to ask them. Another thing to mention is that we're recording this lecture. So after we're done here, we're going to post it on our YouTube channel, and we're going to make that link available to you in your student announcements. Okay, so diving right in, let's go ahead and discuss what technologies we're going to be learning about today. We're going to be focusing on two primary web technologies. Okay, the first one is Bootstrap, and the second one is jQuery. Okay, and so let's go ahead and go over each of those and what they are. Okay, so first let's talk about jQuery. Okay, so jQuery is a JavaScript library which basically compresses a bunch of JavaScript functionality into a series of methods. Okay, and through these methods, we can write a more compressed version of JavaScript, and basically what it says here, right? Write less, do more. So you're basically getting the same effect you would with vanilla JavaScript, except it's even less code to deal with. Okay, so as well as jQuery, we're going to be learning about Bootstrap, and Bootstrap is a design library. Okay, so it's mainly responsible for helping you build the design aspect of your site. So this web page we're looking at right now was built with Bootstrap. Okay, so they provide out-of-the-box components like nav bars and footers and grids and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so we're going to be using that, and it combines HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all in one to create really nice responsive websites with very little work on our part, for the design. Okay, so now we're acquainted with both those technologies. Let's go ahead and start off by setting up a root directory on our desktop. And we'll go ahead and call it Front-End Foundations. And then we'll go ahead and we'll open that up inside of our text editor. Okay, so we'll just give that a minute to boot up. Okay. So from here, let's go ahead and close that. Let's go ahead and start off by adding an HTML document. Okay, so I'm just going to add an index.html right in my root directory. Okay, and I'm going to start off by creating an HTML skeleton. Start with the parent, and then we'll go ahead and throw in a head. And in the head, there will be a title. We'll just say Front-End Foundations. So from here, right below the head, we can add a body. And the body, is where all our visible content is. So let's just go throw in a header tag, and we'll say hello world. Okay, so to test that out, we can save all, and we can copy the path for index.html, and we can drop it right in our browser bar. Let's do it here. Okay, we can see it says, hello world. That's working just fine. Okay, so next, let's go ahead and let's bring in jQuery, okay? And to do this, we have to install it locally in our project, okay? So I'm going to be using a package manager called Bower to do this. If you don't have Bower, you can get it by going to bower.io and installing it for your machine. Okay, and once it's installed, we can start the process off by initializing a bower.json file to track all of our installations. So I'm going to do that by saying bower init. Okay, and then it's going to provide a bunch of prompts. Now I'm just going to use, the default values that are provided. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just really entering my way through. And then, as we can see here, it provides this bower.json, which at the moment is just some metadata about our app. But we're going to use it here shortly to track our installations. Okay, so now we've got that, I can now install jQuery. So I'm going to say bower install jQuery -- save. Okay, and from here, it's going to import that in our root directory in a Bower components folder, and it's going to track the dependency here in our bower.json. So we'll just give it a minute to do that. Okay, so as we can see, brought that in. So now within our index, we need to reference the jQuery library. We need to load it in. Okay, so we can find that in dist and then go to jQuery.min.js and copy the path for this file. Okay, and then what we can do is in the body here, I'll go ahead and throw in an app scripts section. And we can go ahead and throw in a script source pointing to the project path for jQuery, which starts with our components. So next, now we can go ahead and we can save all. And when we refresh the browser, we can see in our network, it's not only loading in our HTML doc, but it's also loading in the jQuery script. Okay, so everything's successful. So now we just need to add our own custom script, right, where we can actually write our jQuery code. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by creating app.js script file in our root directory. Okay, and then we can go and reference that underneath this jQuery reference, because we have to load in jQuery before we can use it within this file. And then I'll just reference app.js here. So we save all and we refresh. You can see it's loading in both our scripts now. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to app.js for our custom script. And the first thing you should understand about jQuery is the symbol. Okay, so every library for JavaScript typically comes with like a keyword or a symbol that represents the library itself. And then you can just use dot notation to access the methods on that library. Okay, and so jQuery has the $sign as its symbol. So let's go ahead and let's console log $sign. Okay, if we save all, we go to our console and refresh, you can see we get functionality, right? It's not just a character or symbol, right? It's the actual functionality. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to target the document and make sure it's ready before I execute any jQuery. Okay, so how I can do this is I can say bling document.ready, and I can put a callback function in here. Okay, and as soon as it's ready, we'll go ahead and we'll console log document is ready. Okay, and that way we don't ever try to use jQuery code before we've loaded in the document, because then we're going to have issues, because jQuery manipulates the document oftentimes. So we don't want to put the cart before the horse. So we save all and we refresh. Okay, and we can see that as soon as it loads in, it runs the callback function and we get this response. Okay, so now within this block here, we can go ahead and we can use jQuery to target elements and manipulate them. Okay, and we can do many different things, but let's just keep it simple and let's use jQuery to target a specific element on our page and change its color. Okay, so to do this, we could go to our main index, and let's say we want to target this header element and change its color as soon as the document loads in. So how I could do this is we could give it an ID, and the ID, let's just call greeting. Okay, and then back in our app.js, we could select that and target it by using the jQuery symbol, and then we need to pass in hashtag in the name of the ID, which was greeting. Okay. Greeting. And then from here, we can go ahead and we can find a variable where we're actually be able to use it within our functions below. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's say let greeting equals this element. Okay, and so what we can do from here is we can change the styles by using a CSS method. Okay, like I said, jQuery is all about the methods, right? When we reference their docs, see all they list is all these different methods, and so I'm going to use a CSS method on this element to change its styles. Okay, so how we could do this is we could say greeting.css, okay, and then I'll pass in the styles. So I'm going to say color, and let's change it to red. Okay, so we save all, and we go back to our front-end code and refresh, you can see as soon as the document loads in, it changes its color to red, okay? And this is what's known as an ID selector, right? We're selecting an element using this ID, and typically it's when we only want to target one element. But there are often times when we want when we want to target groups of elements instead of just say one. So if we want to target groups of elements, we can use a class selector instead. Okay, it's very similar to our ID selector, except like I said, we're using group of elements. So let's explore what that looks like. So let's go ahead and say I have a greeting, and then let's do an H2 that is like a middle, and then we'll do an H3, which is like a farewell, so let's say goodbye. Okay, so now the idea is when the document loads in, we want to target all these elements and change their color. But as you know, we can only give one ID, per element, right? And it has to be unique. So using a class, we can group these all together. So I'm going to say class equals, and let's just do group. Okay. Be our class name. And then let's go ahead and let's assign this class to all of our other elements we want to apply that style to. And then within our app.js, we can go ahead and get rid of our old greeting logic here. And we'll start by using a class selector. Okay, instead of a hashtag, we just use a dot. And we'll target the group elements. And now we can assign this to a variable, just like we did with our greeting. Okay, so we'll say group equals target group. Okay, and then, oops, get rid of this T here. And there we go. And then from here, we can go ahead and apply the CSS. Okay, so we can say group.css, and let's do color blue. Okay. So from here, we save all, and we refresh our browser. We can see that regardless that these are all different element types, because they all have the same class name, I'm able to target a group of elements instead of just one. Okay, and like I said, you're not limited to just changing their colors. You can, change font size and a bunch of other stuff, right? You can really manipulate a lot of things using the DOM, and this is really what jQuery is used for professionally. It tends to be used for like design animations, right? Things on the page that move around. jQuery tends to really excel at that. So that being said, let's go ahead and let's talk about jQuery events. Okay, so just like in traditional JavaScript, we can create events in jQuery. Okay, except they're even easier and more dry to create than our traditional JavaScript approach. Okay, so let's say we have an input and a button, and when the button's clicked, we want to take the value from the input and we want to print it out. Okay, so to do this in jQuery, we'd start off in our index.html, and we create a simple form, right? So we'd say form, and then within this form, or sorry, we're doing input and button. Let's just keep it simple. Okay, so we got an input, and let's just do a placeholder for maybe we're inputting a greeting. Okay, and so next we'll assign this input an ID, and the ID is going to be let's do my input. Okay, and then from here, let's go ahead and throw a button in, and this button will have an ID. This ID we will say equals my button. Okay, so using jQuery, we can use our ID selectors to target both of these, and then we can listen in for a click event on our button and take the value from the input at that time, print it out. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's set up that function. Okay, so we reference the two elements here first. Okay, so let's start off by saying let my input equals bling hashtag my input. and we'll say let my button equals bling hashtag my button. Okay. And then from here, we can set an event listener on the button. When it's clicked, we'll take the value from the input. So how we can do this in jQuery is we'll say my button.click. And then when the button is clicked, it will run this callback function. Okay. And in the callback function, let's go ahead and console log the greeting. Okay. So we're going to say console log my input. And then to get the value from the input, we use the val method. The val method. Okay. So now let's go ahead and test this out in our browser. So we save all, and we refresh our browser. We throw in a greeting. Let's just say hello world, and we submit that greeting. You can see that it takes the value from this when the button is clicked, right? And so that's how we can create, a simple event in jQuery. Okay, but of course we're not just limited to click events. There's many other events we can use. So feel free to explore those as you see fit. Okay, so that's a good introduction to jQuery. So let's go ahead and let's open the floor to see if anyone has any questions so far. Okay, the floor is open, guys. If you have questions, feel free to ask. Okay, don't hear anyone. I think everyone's good so far. So, okay, let's go ahead and continue then, if that's the case. Let's move on to the topic of Bootstrap now, okay? So, Bootstrap, as we discussed earlier, is a design library, right? So, first thing we've got to do is we've got to bring it in, right? We've got to link it up in our project to make, because like we mentioned, it's an accumulation of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all in one. So, to get access to it, we can use these references called CDNs, okay? And a CDN is very similar to referencing, a script within our project, except instead it's referencing a script in the cloud, okay? So that's really the only difference there. So we're going to use a CDN instead of, just a local script reference, okay? So I'm going to start off by copying the CSS for Bootstrap. And we'll put that up right here under the title, okay? And then we need to bring in the scripts for Bootstrap, okay? And you'll notice it has three. It has jQuery, which we just used, right? And as you can see, a professional design library, Bootstrap is using jQuery, right? Because like I said, it tends to be very good at, DOM manipulation. Okay, as well, we're bringing in Popper.js, which is just, for an animation, like a Popper animation. And then the actual Bootstrap library itself for all other animations. So let's go and copy all three of those. And we're just going to replace this, current Bower script with those three right there. Okay. So now let's just go ahead and let's take a minute to save all. And let's go to our network here and make sure, all those scripts are loading in. Okay, so we refresh and we can see that all those new scripts are loading in. And you might also notice even the default styling for the these input and button change too, right? So we can already see Bootstrap's effects taking place. Okay, so now let's just go ahead and go over the core components of Bootstrap. Okay, so let's start with the layout. Okay, so layout is a way of breaking your page into different sections. So like the page we see right now, I'd say, it's broken into three different sections, right? We've got, a section over here, right? Which is, maybe, 1/10 of the page. We've got another section over here, another 1/10 of the page. And then in here, we got like, 8/10 of the page, right? So it's like broken up into like a newspaper almost. And then within each section, right, we can even have more containers that are broken up into this grid, okay? And so, let's go ahead and let's add our own grid to our HTML page. Okay, so as you can see, we have responsive settings we can use for different device sizes. So our grid isn't static. Basically, it doesn't have to stay the same column sizes. It can actually change it based on the screen width. which is really great for creating responsive website design. Okay, so let's just take a moment to copy what they got here, right? As you can see, the logic stands, because they've got two columns, mathematically that's going to split it 50-50, right? And because we got three columns down here, it's going to split it 33, 33, 33. So let's go ahead and save all, and just paste this in place in our browser. And let's go to our browser here, refresh. Okay, and as you can see, we get the same effect in our browser, right? Same thing. Okay, as you can see, they're staying those static sizes. Okay, so if we want to make it responsive based on the screen device size, okay, we can use something like one of the examples down here. Okay, so as you can see, they've got some medium sizes mixed in with some small, right? So let's go ahead and let's take this example here, and let's paste it on in and save it up. And then from here, we can go and refresh. We can see that it's letting us know that on specific screen sizes, it's going to be specific widths. Okay, so watch what happens as we change the screen sizes, right? As you notice, right, there's a breakpoint there where it's going to adjust the column sizes because it no longer looks good to have, many columns across. So you start stacking them in this way, okay? And this is how, responsive websites are made, is grid systems like these. So next, let's talk about the actual web components, right? And the components are just different parts of the web page, right? Like nav bars and footers and buttons and that kind of thing. So first thing we'll talk about is an alert here. An alert is pretty self-explanatory, right? It simply allows us to alert the end user of maybe a warning or success message or anything else. So let's just copy this right into our browser and see how it renders. So we refresh, we can see that we get the same result as we get in Bootstrap. So you'll notice that with each example, they provide really nice code to go with it, right? So you'll never really have to guess how to match what they've got. They actually pretty much spell it all out for you. Okay. So as well as alerts, we got badges, and you've probably seen these on sites like Facebook or Twitter, right? When you've got maybe a notification, something like that nature. So let's go ahead and try these out. Paste them on in, save all, and refresh. Okay, and as you can see, we just got different notifications for different sizes. So really gets customized for different kind of page setups. Here we got breadcrumbs, which is just history of your navigation, right? Where you've been, keep breadcrumbs with that. Buttons, these are really great because normal default browser buttons look really terrible, and we don't want to take a bunch of time to try to style them. So not only do they give these kind of standard buttons here, but they really go the whole 9 yards, right? They give you solid buttons, outline buttons, large buttons, block buttons. I mean, they kind of cover all your bases, right? So let's just go ahead and take a moment to maybe copy off these outline buttons. These look nice, right? So we'll paste these right on in, and we'll save, and we'll refresh. As we can see, we got nice buttons, and they've even got nice little animations, right? Fade in, fade out as we hover over them. So as you can see, it pretty much just works out of the box for us. Here we got button groups, right? So if we don't want spaces between our buttons, we do something a button group, right? If we're like maybe paginating through page data, something of that nature. So let's just go ahead and copy what we got here and paste it on in our markup and try it out in our browser. So we refresh. As we can see, we have nice little button group. Next, we have the card. Okay, and card really is just display some information accompanied by an image. You'll see these normally in things like product descriptions, right? Show the product here, describe it here, the buy button here, add to cart, that kind of thing. So as you can see, provide some code for that, and as well they provide other kinds of buttons, right? or not buttons, I'm sorry, cards. So you have a little more simple card here, list card here, right? I mean, they kind of just, again, cover all your different bases in regards to, you know, the different cards being used. Okay, so let's just use a, you know, a simple card, maybe something like this one, right? So I'm just going to copy that, and let's paste that on in, and let's render that in our browser. Okay, so as you can see, really just a nice little informational dialogue here. Okay, next let's talk about the carousel. Okay, so we've all seen carousels, you know, right? These are basically, you know, transition slides between images. Okay, and so as you notice, they provide, you know, just out of the box working for that, but as well they provide, you know, really nice customizations to where you can, you know, really customize the time between slides and their, you know, the rate they change, and callback functions and all that kind of stuff. It's just really customizable. Next, talk about collapsibles, right? This is if we want to hide data, right, and then display it later. We could use something like a collapsible. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy that. Let's try it out in our browser. Okay, so we save all and refresh. Okay, and as you can see, we get a nice hidden content display with a little drop-down animation. All right, next are drop-downs. Okay, as you can see, just displays you know, multiple little anchored links for us. Let's go ahead and copy those in and try them out. Okay, so we click on the button. As you can see, got a nice little list ready to go for us. Next, we got forms. Okay, and forms is probably one of the best parts of Bootstrap, because normally creating your own form can take very long time, not to mention making it responsive and all that stuff. So by being able to use, you know, their pre-built forms, it really saves you a lot of time. So they got, you know, the simple inputs with buttons, right? But they also got, you know, more complex forms that have things such as, you know, drop downs and you know, file uploads, and you know, you can really get detailed as far as, you know, what data you're getting from your user. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and let's, you know, copy this first form here just to kind of get a feel, right? So we'll copy the code, and we'll just paste that on in our browser. Okay, and we will save, and we will refresh. Okay, and as you can see, we have a nice form ready to go, right? We're maybe logging a user in or something of that nature. Okay, as well as forms, we got input groups, right? Normally you'd see these inside a form somewhere, right? But maybe you need a little more, you know, depth to your inputs, right? Not just maybe a placeholder, but maybe, you know, these extra dialogue on the sides, right? So if that were the case, you could use input groups, like you see here. And so let's just go ahead and let's copy this group and let's try it out. Okay, so we save all and we refresh. Okay, and as you can see, just like it was displayed inside of Bootstrap here, we have you know, a nice set of input groups. Okay, Jumbotron is just when we want to draw attention to something, right? A message or something of that nature. So let's go ahead and use that inside of our browser here. Okay, so as you can see, works right out of the box and looks really nice, really, you know, capturing. It's really hard to ignore, right? So if you want something emphasized, Jumbotron is definitely the way to go. Okay, next we have list groups. And, you know, these are for, you know, if we maybe have list of data we're looping through, something like that, we want to display, we'd use like a list group, right? And they've got like, you know, menu-like list groups or display-only list groups. It just kind of depends on, you know, what you need at the time. Let's just do, you know, one of these like display-only list groups. We'll copy it here, and we will pass it in our markup, and we will refresh. And as you can see, we have a nice list. Next, let's go over modals. Okay, so modals are you know, dialogues that pop up, you know, on the screen. So let's go ahead and watch a modal demo, right? So you can see it in action. Okay, so as you see, really, it's just you know, provides a, you know, a nice you know, kind of a transparent background, a little darkened, right, to emphasize and focus on, you know, the information here, whatever that might be. Okay. Well, modals, we got navs and nav bars, right? So, you know, if you want something like this, right, out of the box, you don't want to have to worry about, you know, building it, so to speak. Oh, there we go. Kind of froze on me for a second. If you don't want to, you know, have to worry about building this out yourself and whatnot, right? So you just come here, and right, they've got, you know, maybe a standard nav bar, but maybe you want something different, right? Maybe, you know, just something like this or like this, maybe with a drop-down link, right? It kind of just, again, have all your bases covered. So let's just copy, you know, a standard nav bar here, and let's have this displayed in our browser. Okay, so we'll paste that on in, and we can refresh. And from here, we can see we have a nice nav bar, right? We didn't have to do any design work, right? No, not a lick of CSS on our end. It just works. And we just kind of have to go in here and replace the link names, match our own website description, whatever else. Okay, so next, pagination. This is, you know, if you're iterating through, you know, multiple, you know, lists of data within your database, right? And so maybe you're retrieving 10 at a time or something, right? You would use these pagination links to do that. Okay. Popovers. These are, you know, pretty self-explanatory. You know, when you know, click on a button, it enables a popover, right? And really, it's just, you know, a little, you know, description about, you know, message that you're trying to communicate to the user. Okay. Next, we have progress, which we've all seen this, right? You know, as a website's loading in or something, you have a progress bar, and so they provide, you know, nice little static percentage, you know, bars, different widths, different heights, different colors, right? And even animated ones if that's what you want to. So let's just go ahead and copy these first few and throw them on in our browser here. Okay, so we save all, and we refresh, and yep, there we go. They don't look that nice because, you know, they're all stacked together, but overall we would only be using one at a time anyway. Next we have scroll spy, which is what you see here, right? As we, you know, iterate down the page, right? It spies, right? It keeps an eye on and highlights the actual link we're navigating through. Okay, and then finally we got tooltips, and tooltips is pretty self-explanatory. Very much like popovers, right? You know, except you don't click them. It's enabled by the you know, the pseudo event hover, right? And so, you know, just kind of like a short, sweet description of what we want to tell the user. Okay, so as you can see, Bootstrap pretty much covers all your bases for all the different parts of the web page. You just have to kind of go through the components and pick out which ones you need, change out the text to kind of match your own purposes, and you're ready to go. And this is actually a very common practice for several developers, because a lot of times Programmers are so caught up in worrying about the logic of the program, they don't have much time to worry about the design. But they still want their website or their web application to look good. So that's where design libraries come into play, where you can simply just download and reference the links to the library, and then use all their pre-built code to quickly scaffold together a website versus needing to do all the CSS from scratch and everything else, which is going to take you a lot longer. So let's go ahead and let's open up the floor, and let's see if anyone has any last questions today. Okay, so the floor is open. Feel free to ask. Okay, it doesn't sound like anyone has any questions. So I'm assuming we're all good for now. If you do have questions pop up later, just feel free to review the video or ask your mentor or myself, about your particular issues. But overall, thank you everyone for attending our lecture. We will see you next time. Have a great rest of your day.